Oh, you know what? I could actually do this instead. Whoa! Whoa! It's not going to be the whole thing, but honestly, this is fine. What's going on, guys? How are we doing today? This is actually all you're going to be able to see. It's just me. Well, I have some things I'd like to do. I have quite a few different podcast episodes that I'm kind of working on simultaneously. I'm going to need a special guest for one of them. I'm just simply not an expert, and to have this conversation, I would like to have an expert in the field. So I'm just gonna kind of talk about some of the things I'm working on, some of the news that I got today as well, which is quite exciting. And I don't know, I'm just kind of gonna hang out and see who joins me. I could actually just open up my stream. There we go. Yeah, you guys shouldn't be able to see this. I hope not. No, you should only be able to see me, really. Yeah. Ooh, what was that? So, we'll get right into it. I wanted to turn my music down a little bit, but I think it's fine. Actually. That's good. All right, so, first I'll get into the 3. Yeah, I'm working on 3 podcasts right now, aren't I? I suppose I am. Okay, so the first podcast I'm working on, it's called The Falsity of Republican Jesus. So, the idea is basically this. Modern day conservatives, or specifically modern day Republicans. Here, I'll take my hood off for this. You guys can actually see me. There we go. All right. So basically, it works like this. Let me get this. Yeah, you can actually see like my body, maybe a little bit. Oh well, you can't see the mic, but it basically works like this. The ideas, or the ideals, or the prospects, or the fundamentals of who Jesus Christ was does not align in the absolute slightest with what the Republican Party is today. And so that's something that I felt was profound enough to make an episode about. But I don't have enough information about the history of Christianity. Doubly so, I'm an atheist. So anything that I would collect, I would have a little bit of a bias to not believe everything, which I've already understood. So it's important to get somebody instead who is a theologian or priest or somebody who can help me in this regard. I reached out to one of my friends, but he's unfortunately going through some things. That's okay. I hope he's doing better soon. So he won't be able to help me, unfortunately, and but he's very educated when it comes to religion, specifically Christianity. So that's what I'm looking forward to, having somebody that can come on. Oh, I don't have my chat on my OBS. Yeah, I should probably do that. Oh my goodness, I have to do this while I'm streaming. All right, whatever. And give me just a second, and I'll get back into what we're talking about. But yeah, well, let me try to multitask. So I want to talk to somebody. I want to have them on the podcast so I can have a firsthand account of somebody who is a believer of this religion. So that way, especially people that are watching me, they don't feel like I'm just dunking on Christianity for not, because a lot of people that are in, that are Christians are also conservative or also Republicans. And so I'm kind of understanding why that overlap exists. But in the same degree, I want to understand why it shouldn't. Because I'll put it this way. Some of the teachings of Jesus Christ, he had said things like, care for the poor, right? Care for the needy, care for the sick. It's not your job to judge. I'm not, that's the thing. I don't also know all the teachings of Jesus Christ. I was raised as Christian, but like for many people, I'm sure that are also Christian, their understanding of faith is different from other Christians. And so the teachings of Jesus Christ maybe are just what that person wanted the teachings of Jesus Christ to be, right? So that's kind of the problem, right? Is that I've said this before, religion is an individual thing. It's always been an individual thing. People within the same household that go to the same church that, worship what they think the same God have maybe a different idea or differing idea of what God really is or what their religion really means. So with that in mind, it's not something that you should ever impose on other people, but that's secondary to this exact conversation. What I'm more getting at, I don't know how to get my chat up, so we're just going to keep it like this. This is fine. Basically, the Republican ideology is antithetical to the teachings of Jesus Christ. Right? But most Republicans, or I would say a large majority of Republicans, which is most, I suppose, believe in God, or strictly so believe in the Christian God. They believe in the teachings of Jesus Christ. If Jesus Christ was alive today, or if he was on earth today and he was able to sparse knowledge, to Republicans, do you think he would agree with Republicans? Probably not, in my honest opinion. And from some of the things I've seen, you know, I've done a little bit of research. Like I said, I used to be a Christian, so I know what it means to be part of that faith. I was a Christian until I was about 13, and then I decided for myself after I watched some YouTube videos and I had looked up some things and I had conversations with people as well. That was probably the largest factor, is that I had conversations with people in my family and some people from my old church, or just people from school that were also in my religion or what I thought. And I spoke to somebody who was a Methodist, which I don't even really know what a Methodist is today. I don't know what a Methodist is, but I was Presbyterian, and we had different ideas of what God was. And that kind of led me to believe, wait a second, if God was real, wouldn't everybody be on the same page about it? Because isn't that what God wants, right? So that was kind of my first thinking. And then as I saw some things that were like, hey, these are scientific inaccuracies in the Bible that we can prove, that's where I started to understand, okay, maybe Christianity is not something I can confide in anymore. So yes, when I was 13, I actually kind of had a little bit, not like a mental breakdown, but I was a little bit upset. And I remember I had a conversation with my mom and I was very upset. I was crying. I basically told her that my grandmother was not right. That's the way I was able to say that I didn't believe in God anymore, was that my grandmother was not right. And that's hard, you know, as a 13-year-old reckoning with your faith. So, you know, but I'm happy in the position that I'm in now, and I don't ever try to take religion away from people. I hope that's something that I can make very clear, abundantly clear. But in that same vein, yes, so that's why I wanted to make this podcast episode. I was going to title it "The Falsity of Republican Jesus," and one of the first questions is, why are Republicans mostly Christian? And I couldn't really find a primary source online for that. I looked on Reddit, which I don't know any of those people. They could be making it up. They could be conflicting two ideas or whatever. It's just not the basis of our podcast, which is in one ear out. I get information, it enters my head, and I express it to you guys in this medium with as little bias or with zero bias for as much as I can help. We all have bias. We all have complicit bias and complicit and implicit bias. So biases that we know about and biases that we don't know about are biases. So in that same vein, I think it's a good idea to have a special guest on for this, and it would not be to talk down on religion in any sense, or especially Christianity. It would instead just be to point at the differences between the teachings of Jesus and the interpretation of modern day Christianity in the Republican Party. I think that would be very profound, and to have somebody on, it would be the first of its kind for an interview like that on the channel and for the podcast as well, because for the majority of the podcast, we are secular. We don't talk about religion unless it's I kind of had like a debate maybe with Aiden, who came on. He did a podcast episode with me, and he has his own podcast. Actually, it's been a while since he did anything with that. Unfortunately, it'd be cool to see him do stuff with that again. But he did the Ignorant Gnostic podcast, and I thought it was pretty profound. Actually, I like the name as well, and I appreciate his perspective. So I don't want people to think that this channel exists as a monument of atheism. It's not at all. This is a place for all people to be. I just happen to be an atheist, which just means a non-believer of God. So with that in mind, the other podcast that I'm working on, I'll give you guys a little bit of an expose, a little behind the scenes again. So I'm working on another one called Vision for a Space Economy. And so basically it's describing how things work, or how I envision things to work. It's just my personal, or I could even say it's a more opinion based, which is kind of rare for the podcast these days. Usually I do more research when it comes to getting information for a topic. And that's why the episodes have become a little shorter, because I found that I can kind of research for a couple days, but when it comes to recording and expressing that information, I get through it pretty quick. So it's like, well, you know, for the last one I did, which, let's see, I got it right here. Yeah, with the my plan for retirement, that video didn't really do exceptional, which I titled it My Plan for Retirement. People don't really give a fuck, if I'm being honest. I get that. People don't care. And sorry for swearing if you were hoping not to hear any swear words this stream. That is something that I possibly have to work on a little bit, because I'll be honest, I do swear a good amount. I swear a lot, actually. And I want to be a role model for people when I'm a bit older, you know. And I've unfortunately come to this conclusion. It is unfortunate. I'm not going to delete the videos, but once I get monetized on the main channel, on just the John Holmberg channel, I'm going to delete all the gaming streams, unfortunately, or just archive them or private them so nobody can see them. And reason for that is when I'm playing games, I'm having a good time. I'm saying, whatever. I swear a lot. I die, and I'm like, oh, this fucking guy, or this, or whatever, or this fucking piece of shit. And, it's just a little uncouth when it comes to trying to run for a political office. I'm not saying it's even a bad thing that I've sworn, and I'll probably continue to swear, but especially when it comes to one of the things I want to do, which is not just run for president, but it's also be a role model for children and for families to say, I want you to, try to be like this man. I feel like, especially for children today, they don't have good role models, because if I look to our leadership, or I look to our governments, or I look to the people we're expected to say, these are our community leaders, I'm disappointed, whether it's locally or nationally or globally even. There's not anybody that I can really point to that's alive today that I say that should be a mentor for my children, right? There's a few people that I could say they're very kind people, or they're very smart people, or that they've done good things, and that's good. But there's nobody that I can say, I want my children to grow up like them, or I want them to have the values of this person while they're older, or when they're older. And that's kind of too bad. So at the very least, I hope to fill that. And if nobody exists by the time that I kind of get into that position, then it would make me very happy. In the same sense, kind of sad, but very happy to be a role model. So that means I already don't drink. I can't smoke weed, unfortunately. And I don't smoke cigarettes or do any other drugs. So the only thing I would really still probably do if I was president, if I could, which I don't know, maybe by that time I just wouldn't even care about it anymore. But maybe I would still consume weed, because it is also a good idea. Not to do it, but it's a good idea for what I want to do, which is advocate for decriminalization and full legalization of marijuana. This is something 10 years in the future, 11 years in the future. So I can't even say maybe by the time, I can say actually by the time I get there that it might already be taken care of. So I don't know. It's not a big concern for me. But being a role model in any other public-facing way, I don't want to be seen. I'll never be seen with a cigarette in my mouth. Ever. 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 Never. Cigarettes are one of the worst things that you could put on, that you could do. Smoking a cigarette is one of the worst things you can do, because if it gets you addicted to cigarettes, my God, my goodness, I feel terrible for you. My grandmother smoked cigarettes for like 50 years, and my aunt has, and some other people I know, and I've had friends that have quit, thankfully, or other people that haven't, and I had a buddy who honestly smoked so many cigarettes that at some point he would have certainly struggled with lung cancer, but he died before that would be a problem. So a very interesting relationship with cigarettes, you could say. But that's just kind of how it goes. Oh yeah, I was talking about my podcast and my vision. So yeah. So it's more opinion based. I'll just wrap up that thought quick. I do want to be a role model, and so abstaining from drugs and alcohol is probably a good idea. I already don't drink. I don't like consuming alcohol, so that's not a problem. And I don't do drugs or smoke cigarettes. So unfortunately, for most people, like, they don't need to do that to be a role model. I'm not going to say necessarily unfortunately. I'm still getting off my tangent here. Anyway, you can kind of see the background of how it works. Usually, I'm I'm recording multiple takes. I usually do like 3 or 4 takes at this point for each episode. Maybe that's why they get shorter and shorter, because I used to just do like one take, sometimes 2. But now I do like 3 or 4 to really get it right. And so it's a lot more concise. And so what used to be like, a 30, 40, maybe an hour-long video of me just kind of like getting to the point is now I have an outline in front of me, multiple pages of research, things I can call back to, and for the past couple of days I've been working on this, so it's pretty easy for me to get it right. But yeah, with that in mind, I do want to talk about this next podcast episode, which is Vision for a Space Economy. So basically how it works. There are many things that I want to talk about that are possible today, or either in the next 5 years, or today, I should say. So they are asteroid mining, moon bases, orbital cities, orbital bases, hydrogen fueling stations that are basically gas stations. We'll talk about these a lot more in depth once it comes time for the video. and then eventually a Mars colony and a moon colony and all that stuff. But I don't really think that's within the next 5 years. But I will say this, asteroid mining. I talk about asteroid mining quite a bit, and a lot of people I'm sure also talk about it. It's this pie in the sky idea to make everybody rich, right? Well, that's not how I see things. I will tell you why it's important, why I personally agree that asteroid mining is not only inevitable, but it is, or it should be, the next path forward for what humanity decides is our next frontier. Space, the final frontier, right? So I'll put it this way. The most in-demand thing that we can realistically get our hands on as people is precious metals, or as they're more formally known as, you've probably heard, rare earth metals or rare earth elements, REEs. These are also things regarded as platinum-based or platinum, family? Yeah, platinum, in the platinum family of metals. So that's like palladium and things like that. So a rare earth mineral or a rare earth metal or a rare earth element, they're REEs, that's what they're called. They're used in the highest and most efficient technology for anything. If you can imagine what a sorry, I got a notification that threw me off track. No, come back to me. Asteroid mining. Oh gosh. See, and this is why I usually do multiple takes. Man, I got a notification. I read it. It concerned me. Yeah, whatever. Okay, but let me talk about this instead. Sorry, I forgot my example. Yeah. Now you guys get to see behind the scenes. That's kind of funny. So anyway, asteroid mining. It's not going to really make everybody rich. It's more so, it's the next opportunity for humanity. It's kind of the logical next step. Yeah, so for rare earth minerals or rare earth elements, I'm just going to say REEs from now on. You guys should know at this point what I mean. REEs. For REEs, they're at the cutting edge of our technology. So if you can imagine the most cutting edge, bleeding edge, most advanced thing that you could think of that exists today, it is built out of rare earth elements. It is built out of things like yttrium and cobalt and palladium. And I think Einsteinium is one, and there's a ton. I'm gonna look it up right now. Actually, I have the power to do that. REEs. Oops. Nope. Rare earth metals or rare earth elements. Yeah, it's both. So REEs. It's 17 metallic elements in the periodic table. Yes. The 15 lanthanides plus scandium and yttrium. Despite the name, they're relatively abundant in the Earth's crust, but are not notoriously difficult. Oh, but yes, that's the thing. So that's the other thing. The reason that you want to do asteroid mining is because terrestrial mining is very costly, and it is not the most efficient way that we could possibly be extracting elements that we need for manufacturing in any regard. And there's one more thing. And if we want true abundance... Oh my gosh, why are more people texting me? Hold on, I gotta read this text. If we want more abundance, oh, okay, goodness. Accept a big house and a cat. Okay, cool. Nice. Sorry about that, guys. So, in outer space, not only... So I'll put it this way. When you mine an asteroid, it's comprised of many different things. An asteroid is comprised of it can be comprised of many different things, but because it's in what's called microgravity, where it's a celestial body to some degree, but it's a very small celestial body, it's not necessarily compacted. It's kind of like a loose collection of matter. So it can be a bunch of different things. Mostly they're ice, or some of them can mostly be ice, which is water, frozen water. So what you do basically is you take that water and you turn it into hydrogen, and then you use that in fuel for the rockets. So that's the point. It's self-sustaining. And you take this a couple steps further in my vision, and I'll get there in the video especially. But, and this is touching more into the economy, I'll just mention this. What you want to do is, or what I want to do, is I want to recollateralize the US dollar and I want to use the rare earth elements that are mined from asteroids to be the security that backs the US dollar. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, the US dollar is the global reserve currency, meaning it's the most used, most prolific monetary system or currency on planet Earth. And we experience a lot of economic privileges as Americans because of that. So with that in mind, we want to maintain the US dollar as the global reserve currency. A good way to do that is to give it a backing, because as it stands now, it's a fiscal currency, meaning we have no serious security guarantee to our currency. It's just backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. What does that mean? That means that you can use it in the United States. You can pay all, it says right on it. Where's my wallet? Oh, you can see it says all for all debts, public and private. So that means you can use it within this country because it's backed by the United States government. So as long as the United States government exists, this money will be useful because the United States government also has control of the largest economy, right? There's many different things that play into this for the simple understanding. But this was not always the case. I made a video, it was called the $39 trillion problem. And I also made a video about the petrodollar system, and I happen to include some bits about the Bretton Woods Agreement. This is from a 1944 conference that happened during World War II between about 44 countries, I think it was. The USSR, Great Britain, the United States especially, and most other countries at the time that were not Germany. And they decided, because of the war and because of how devastated the United Kingdom was from the war, that they should instead give the privilege of being the world reserve currency to the United States, because the United States has not been threatened or destroyed by war outside of what happened at Pearl Harbor. They didn't really lose any other territory, and there was no significant fighting outside of that happened in North America. So the United States said that this is what we'll do. In the Bretton Woods Agreement, they said that all these currencies, there was a lot of different currencies at the time, are pegged to the US dollar at a fixed rate. And then the US dollar is pegged to the price of gold, meaning every currency on earth that was tied to the US dollar was in tandem tied to the price of gold, meaning there was a security backing to your currency, which makes your currency more powerful because more people look at it and say, I can invest in that currency knowing there's a physical backing. I can go to the bank, I can go to the treasury, and I can say, I have this money, turn it into a physical commodity for me. And they would. Here's the problem. 1971, Richard Nixon took us off of the gold standard. Why did he do that? Because we didn't have enough gold to justify the price of our money, meaning, or sorry, not the price, the supply of our money, meaning we were printing more money than we had gold to back it, which will bring down the price of gold, or conversely inflate the price of the dollar, which is bad. So we got off the gold standard. Nixon signed the executive order, I believe it was, or he signed legislation that got us off of the gold standard, meaning that every currency on planet Earth that was tied to the US dollar at that point, and thus tied to gold, was no longer. And all those currencies became fiscal, meaning no physical or commodity backed, or it's not a physical or commodity backed currency. It's a security backed currency, or it's a it's basically just nothing. Like I said, full faith and credit. There's nothing that backs the currency outside of people agreeing that it's valuable. That's it. But because of the global reserve currency, like I said, we have exclusive economic privilege of being being the reserve currency. That means that people want our dollars, which makes them valuable, which means that we get to experience a degree of economic privilege because of that. I hope I explained that well enough. Okay. With that in mind, we are hitting a point where the United States' dollar's dominance is no longer unchallenged or unrivaled. There's things like BRICS, there's things like China, just to begin with, and there's what is called the de-dollarization effect, where countries are ditching their securities of US dollars because they don't agree or believe in the institution anymore, or they think something is coming in its path to replace it. And that's a big deal, because I've said this before, I'll say this again. We do not understand as average Americans what the benefits of having the dollar as the global reserve currency is, or what it is, what it does for our lives. But we will certainly understand the time that it goes away. We will certainly understand what it's like to lose that, because our economy will be in shambles. The world will move away from the United States dollar if they so choose, and we will no longer be the pinnacle of attention and influence. That's just the truth of the matter. There's a lot that goes into being the global reserve currency, and because of specific things, especially say like the war in Iran, where a lot of countries are saying, if the United States is simultaneously disrupting supply lanes, global supply chains, and then simultaneously the biggest financial the biggest financial system in the world, these things are kind of conflicting. It seems like they are not good at being responsible as the global reserve currency. You got to understand, the rest of the world does not think like Americans. They think like their own selves. And so you have to use more simple logic, because they're not going to think, oh, well, Americans, there's a reason for that. There's a reason it should be like this, and they just don't see it. You're absolutely right. Well, that's called your bias. That's your bias. It's your bias that dictates whether somebody actually, or whether you can understand if somebody's going to feel for you. Right? You think that everybody else is going to say, well, they want Americans to be this way, and they want the United States to have the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Why? Why would you think that? They most certainly do not. I'm sure some do, maybe. But if you're a European, or say if you're maybe even, we'll just say maybe Chinese, you probably would be happier if your currency was the global reserve currency. It would make your life better. It would increase your standard of living and the people around yours, standard of living as well. Better economic privilege. So why do we want to recollateralize the dollar then? We want to recollateralize the dollar so that it doesn't lose its tangibility as a currency. And so people, after many years of just, haplessly printing more and more money every time the government wants to, basically. Not necessarily, because they're not necessarily in charge of the money supply, but in some capacity they kind of are. They have policy that can dictate some things like that. They're not necessarily directly in charge of it. That'd be the Federal Reserve that says, they call it quantitative easing. If you ever hear the term quantitative easing, that means printing money. All right, this is corporate jargon. This is the bureaucracy speaking here. If you ever hear a politician or somebody from the Federal Reserve or an economic analyst or anybody from Wall Street use the words quantitative easing, that just means printing money. All right, that's like they try to make it difficult so that the general public doesn't have access to this information, but bear that in mind. Quantitative easing, it just means, here, I should probably open my chat on my phone. That would be the most exceptional idea. This whole time I'm just sitting here. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I do need a better camera. It's not the best. Oops, what did I just do? That's okay. We're just kind of chilling, just kind of chatting. Am I actually coming out good though? Yeah, I think we're fine. I think we're fine. So, all right, why should we recollateralize the US dollar then? Because it gives it a backing. And you say, okay, that could be important. It makes it more desirable for other countries to hold it, and it makes it more powerful as a currency. So in the future, you say, well, John, what if we run out of asteroids with rare earth minerals in them to back our currency? Guess what? Actually, I don't remember exactly. Hold on. There are basically too many asteroids for that to be a problem. Or you can do something else. You can say all the asteroids that exist out there are part of the security backing, and going and getting them is just part of the process. So you can say the United States dollar is backed by the asteroids that are sitting in our solar system, that contain rare earth elements, that contain hydrogen that can be used for fuel, that can further the space economy as well. That would bring more economic power, and we could experience a kind of a golden age, not necessarily like an economic golden age just based off of that, but there's so much more that goes into the space economy with that. Just attaching a commodity to your currency again. So here's the last part I'll say about this before we get into our next thing, and that is the reason you use rare earth elements, like I've said, is because today they are on the bleeding edge of our technological advancements, and they will likely be that way for the next 20 to 30 years until we discover something new, if we do. We still use silver and gold in electronics, and we've been doing that for a long time. We will likely continue to do so. Yttrium, cobalt, palladium, platinum, whatever else. The list can go on and on. If they're already at such a high and critical demand today, and they're already the most critical components needed for our bleeding edge technology, or the most advanced technology we can have, in the future, it will likely still be the case. We'll give it 100 years before rare earth elements are no longer the top dog when it comes to manufacturing our components for their most critical hardwares. That means that having these rare earth elements in our possession today is an investment, right? And backing our currency with it just means that in the future, when it's very likely for them to be more valuable, that means we can print more money if the price goes up. So the demand will increase for the rare earth elements because we'll have better access to them, which might bring the price down for a little bit, which is fine. More people on planet Earth have access to these elements that we're getting from outer space, we're getting from asteroids, and we're able to manufacture them into more technology that allows for a higher standard of living for other people on the planet. Now, all of a sudden, more people are participating in the economy, more people are able to buy these rare earth elements. That maybe could drive the price up now because there's a higher demand than there is a supply. And that will always bring prices up. When there's a higher when there's a higher supply than there is demand, the price will go down. That's a pretty simple supply and demand understanding. So with that, the world will become a better place with a higher standard of living, with more integrated technology, with a better access to these rare earth elements that are critical for certain technologies. And as the proliferation of these technologies increases, more people have access to them. It's a self-repeating cycle. Or what does it say? It's the closed system, basically. It feeds into itself. So the more people that have access to these rare earth elements, or the more countries that can manufacture things for their citizens to increase their standard of living, the more people then will have a demand for more rare earth elements. Rare earth elements being tied to the US dollar means the more that people want technology, the more people are going to need the US dollar. So that is the big reason to do that. Furthermore, so we're kind of getting on to our next stuff now, but then still the same idea for this video, for the vision for a space economy. It is this. If we have a space commerce tax, say everything that comes from outer space that gets sold into the United States, there is a 10% commerce tax on that, paid for by the people that mine the asteroids, or selling to whatever company is or the processing centers, terrestrial processing centers, I should say, the ones on Earth. So that 10% tax that's collected, that goes to the U.S. national debt directly. It goes to the U.S. national debt. So instead of not doing anything about the debt, we have an entire industry where the only tax that you're collecting, and let's say, for instance, the industry's not doing good, you can lower that tax. The industry's doing very good, you can raise that tax. It's a lever. It's a lever for control to regulate the economy, which helps. And it's paying down the national debt. At first, it would be a couple million, but then after a couple of years, it would be, maybe after the first year, it would be billions. And then after that, 10% on everything coming into the United States from outer space, that could get into a lot of money. Over a couple of years, you could expect maybe $1 trillion. After a decade of collecting that 10% space commerce tax, yeah. So that unlocks a lot of money. It creates a new, entirely new industry for outer space. Because now, I want to get into more of this stuff when it comes to the podcast, because this one is actually going to be a lot of fun to do. But when we're talking about orbital cities or orbital bases or colonies on Mars, it's going to be a lot easier if we already have an integrated space economy with supply lanes, and where things are routinely happening in outer space, and where we have infrastructure. It'll be a lot easier to progress, as humanity should, into space if we have infrastructure that already exists, and we've already decided what the economy should look like. These are decisions that if we make them early, or make them at the right time, I should say, and we make them correctly, then it could guarantee longevity of this economy in outer space. All right. So that's pretty cool, right? This actually ties into my next episode, or the one I'm working on. I don't know if I'll do this one first or if I'll do the one I just spoke about first. And that is the North American Union. So what is it? Who is involved? There are 23 North American countries. I can't list them all yet. I'm working on it. There are quite a few. There's Trinidad and Tobago. There's the United States, Canada, Mexico. There's Jamaica. There's Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic. So that's what, 8. Then there's Nicaragua, Guatemala, Belize. I'm not looking at anything. I do have something open, but I'm not looking at it. Like I said, Belize, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Panama. There's some weird ones. There's the British Virgin Islands. I guess if you count Denmark's, I don't know if you count Greenland as a country. Maybe you would. So I guess we'll say Greenland. It's Greenland? Let me check, actually. So that's 15 so far, and there's 23. Oh, goodness. What else have I forgotten? I'm very sorry if you're in the continent of North America and I've forgotten you. Oh, Barbados. Yeah. Dominica. So that's 17. 5 more. I don't remember. I think I have to look. Yeah, all right. So anyway. Costa Rica. I'm very sorry, Costa Rica. Yeah, Costa Rica, Grenada, El Salvador. Oh my gosh, I feel like such a dunce. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Lucia. Okay. I got all the other ones though? Yeah, I did. Oh, nope. St. Kitts and Nevis. St. Kitts and Nevis. I did get Trinidad and Tobago, which is one country. St. Lucia, or Lucia. I think it's Lucia, Lucia. Yeah. Okay, well that wasn't bad, right? That's not bad. Oh, and then there's Antigua and Barbuda. And then there's the Bahamas. So I missed a couple. So I got 17 right out of 23. Yeah, so 5. Not bad though. So why do I want to propose an economic union with the 23 countries in North America? Considering one of them is Cuba, and Cubans, or no, not Cubans. I won't say that. I'll say the United States government has not treated Cuba well over the past 100 years. I'll say that. Furthermore, it goes back even farther than that, actually, with the war. What was the Spanish-American War? We actually occupied Cuba, and we basically forced them to sell us their sugarcane and work in plantations. And they didn't really like that because that was kind of slavery. It wasn't exactly slavery, but there was really bad working conditions, and they were kind of forced in a way. Because there's, the best paying jobs are the ones that are, from America. And so American companies come down and they basically, subjugated the people, forced them to work in their companies, and then, all of the sugarcane which was sent out to other countries, most of the United States. So, yes, and then obviously the Bay of Pigs invasion, things like that. We got a military group to basically invade Cuba, but they failed. That was under JFK. So the Cubans, they have good reason to not like us, but I would like to work with the Cubans. We'll see what that looks like in 11 years. But yes, an economic union with all 23 countries in North America. Why do we do this? Well, could you believe it? A lot of these countries actually already use the US dollar. So I found out today that Belize, which is a country that borders Mexico, the southern part of Mexico, they speak English because it used to be a Great British possession. I think until 1980s. In the 1980s, they got their independence from King Charles III. I think I read that today. It wasn't King Charles then. Either way. So, yeah, this is just kind of like still freestyle. We're just kind of like chilling. So, basically, Belize, they use the US dollar, and they have a fixed exchange rate. And there's another country that has a fixed exchange rate. There's 2 more countries, actually, that have a fixed exchange rate with the US dollar. It's Belize, and what else is it? Panama. Or no, sorry. Barbados. So Belize and Barbados, they peg their local currencies to the US dollar. So it's a 2-to-1 for Belize. So if you went to Belize as an American and you had a US dollar, you had $1, you could spend it just as easily Or you could go to any most I will say most Belize vendors say and say, hey, I have $1 give me the exchange rate, and it's fixed, so that means it'll always be $2 or $1 to 2 what are they, Belizean dollars, or what are they called? I guess that would be the case. So it's a fixed exchange rate, and that's the same thing for Barbados as well. I just don't know the fixed exchange rate there. So here's the countries in North America that already use the US dollar, like as a currency. Okay, so United States, obviously. El Salvador, the US dollar is legal tender, and so is Bitcoin. Actually, Bitcoin is legal tender in El Salvador. The British Virgin Islands, it's owned by Great Britain, and it's technically its own possession, its own country. I think it's technically not. It's under the crown. So yeah, the British Virgin Islands, but they use the US dollar. They don't use the pound sterling. They use the US dollar, and they speak English. And then there's Turks and Caicos, which is these islands, and that's part of the Bahamas, I believe. Or no, that's also the official. No, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it right now. Turks and Caicos Islands. Copy. We're gonna look this up because my least favorite thing is sharing misinformation. So territory larger, smaller Turk to tropical archipelago. 40. So Turks and Caicos is an archipelago of 40 low-lying coral islands in the Atlantic Ocean, a British overseas territory. Southeast of the Bahamas, the gateway of the Provincials, known as Bravo, is home to the expansive Grace Bay Beach. Okay. So is that part of the British Virgin Islands? Most likely, I would say, is the British possession. Yeah, British overseas territories. Oh, that's nice. So with that in mind, there's already these countries that. So these are the countries that already use. Oh, where is it? Where are you? Here you go. United States, El Salvador, the British Virgin Islands, and then there's Belize, Barbados, Panama, and Cuba. All use the US dollar. That is 7 out of the 23 countries in North America that not only use but accept as legal tender the US dollar. So it would not be more difficult. It would be less difficult than most economic unions, and the basis already exists. I'll tell you what the biggest problem is. It's the history, and it's the reluctance of the American government, or the federal government especially say the president, to take accountability for the actions of previous administrations and say, we are not going to do the things that have happened so far. Whether that's instilling dictators, whether that's overthrowing governments, whether that's sending in paramilitary groups, whether that's doing whatever. We've been doing a lot of that throughout the 1900s in Latin America. So with that in mind, it would take a president to go forward and say, not only am I going to stop that, but I'm going to become the accountable incumbent. And I will come to you as a person and in Espanol. What did I say earlier? I do speak a good amount of Spanish, and so that would help as well. By the time I get there, I will be hopefully fluent in Spanish. So I say, muchas gracias para la invitar a este país. A este país es una cita de mucha or muy. I guess I would say mucho or muchas significas y muchas hermosas. Much beauty and much significance. Muchas gracias para la invitar. Yo soy John, mucho gusto. Yo soy el presidente de Estados Unidos. Or whatever, that's not as best as I can do. But I do know a good amount of Spanish, and so meeting these people halfway, not even halfway, showing up to their country and greeting them in Spanish, saying, hola mi gente, say, hello my people. I think they would appreciate that a lot. And it would go very far to say, especially, I just learned about Guatemala today, and the things that we did in Guatemala. We basically instilled a dictator, and then a couple years later, there was a genocide from that government of the basically a certain group which is half Aztec, half European. So people that can draw their lineage, because Guatemala was the heartland of the Aztec Empire. So they have a lot of ruins, they have a lot of architecture, and they have a lot of heritage as well. So one of the things that I would do as president is I would recognize the United States' participation in the Native American genocide. And that would extend really just to, what the United States encumbers. But I would also I would also ask possibly European countries to do the same for what their participation in the New World at the time was. Specifically the conquistadores and the British Empire especially. Because they're kind of responsible for a lot of... And France as well. It's basically Spain, France, and England, or the UK, are responsible for the genocide of millions of native inhabitants in North America. Whether you call them Native Americans, whether you call them Indians, whether you call them Aztecs or Mayans, or whatever they were. Whatever they were to you, or whatever they existed as, they were eradicated and their culture was suppressed for hundreds, if not... about hundreds of years. And even in the modern sense, we kind of still, as Americans, have a culpability to the history of these countries as well, and a further eradication of their people. So I would hope that in some capacity, my acknowledgement of the past, my acceptance of history, and my willingness to do something about it would be good for these people to see the change I'm hoping to pursue as president. And one of the biggest things especially is to raise the standard of living of these countries is something that I think needs to happen, because if we are neighbors, we cannot be the richest country on the planet and all of our neighbors are poor. I don't like that idea. I don't like the idea that people in my hemisphere are experiencing extreme poverty in such a degree to where, I'll put it this way. I went to the Dominican Republic, a North American country. And while I was there, we went on an excursion. So we went off the resort. I went with my family. It was my sister, my brother, and I. My parents were there, but they took their own dune buggy. So my brother was driving, and we drove past these houses. And they were basically shacks, or what you would say is a shed. The size of a shed. Smaller than my room. You see this room that I'm in? Probably a quarter the size of this room. And there was a family of 4 or 5. There was the mom, and she had, I think, 4 or 5 kids. Or sorry, 3 or 4 kids. And these kids were running out to us, and they had like really tattered and dirty clothes on, like ripped up at the bottoms. You could tell like it was scraping against something because it would touch the ground, or it was just dirty because they've worn it for so long or whatever. And they were running towards us and coming up to the fences and holding out their hands or trying to give us little pieces of paper that they had drawn hearts on or drawn things on because they were trying to get money from us. I felt fucking terrible. I felt disgusting. Here I am, sitting on the back of a dune buggy while my brother and sister are, we're getting driven around. Well, my brother's driving, so he's driving us around because we spent all this money to come here for fun. This is where people suffer. This is where people don't know better. They don't know different. And I came here as a fucking tourist. Right? I came here for fun. On that same trip, I traded a man who worked on the resort food for jewelry. I have many pieces of jewelry made out of moonstone that are probably not very valuable, but they were free. They cost me slices of pizza. The biggest discredit to the American Empire is that we think the United States is the only country on planet Earth that matters. Or we've forgotten that as a country of immigrants, we should respect the rest of the world, considering the rest of the world is considered America. Or I should say that differently, that America is considered, kind of like a central part of the world. We have so many different cultures represented in our society. Every culture is represented in our society, from every single country that exists on planet Earth. I can guarantee that. How many other countries can you say that about? That they have representation for every single faction, faith, and people that exists on planet Earth. But in that same way, we've betrayed our neighbors. We've betrayed the people that have sought new life here to do better. Why? Money. Power. I don't know, whatever you want to say, I guess. You can figure that part out on your own. But I'm very excited to be able to help these people. I will say that much. That's kind of all I have for these 3 podcast episodes I'm working on. I'm not sure if a lot of people are really even watching, but that's okay. I just kind of wanted to chat for a little bit. I thought it'd be a good idea to go live. I said I was going to, and I wanted to see how these would do. Turns out nobody really wants to watch specifically what I'm doing, so that's fine. I probably won't do this again. Or maybe I will. I don't know. But what I can say is I'm very excited for a special guest for the next episode, or for an upcoming episode of the In When You're Out podcast. I'm very much looking forward to sharing my vision for space economy for another episode. And lastly, the North American Union. That's something I'm not just excited to make an episode about, but I'm excited to actually do as president if I have the opportunity, which I am creating the opportunity for myself. So how about that? So with that in mind, what else can we kind of talk about? The North American Union. Oh, I didn't say this yet. That would also help with the global reserve currency. That would strengthen the dollar, because if more countries all of a sudden start using the dollar, then the dollar becomes more valuable because more people are seeking to use the dollar. Or they need, or it could be used more places, so that becomes more valuable. If that was coupled with the fact that we were asteroid mining and using the rare earth elements to back the currencies, or back the currency of the U.S., but also all the other currencies that were fixed locally to the U.S. dollar, that would be a great thing. That'd be a great thing again, It would do really well for the countries in North America, especially. So, furthermore, I want to do something. It's not just economic guarantee. There's also security guarantees. And it would work like this. These countries in North America, they still pay for their military. They have federal spending just as any other country does. And they use that federal spending for certain ways. A lot of it sometimes goes towards military. Not always a lot of it, but a good amount. So they're not buying the best stuff. They don't have American hardware, American military equipment. Maybe a little bit, but not to the same extent, right? They have a lot of stuff. It's like a hodgepodge. So I'll put it this way. These countries, if they become part of the economic union in North America with the United States and they start using the US dollar, instead of them paying for their own military, they could then subsidize the United States military at a reduced rate. Say, for instance, Jamaica spends, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. Say Jamaica spends $50 billion every year on their military. And then the next year they're like, well, we're going to raise it to $55 billion, but we really can't, pay for that. We don't have the money for that. What we need, we can justify that we need that type of military, but we can't afford it. So instead, the United States says, okay, you're part of our economic union. We're providing security guarantees as well. What you can do is 80% of your military budget subsidizes the United States military, and now the United States military will replace your military. And anybody who wants to from your country, if they still want to join the military, they can join the American military, but just be stationed in your country. That is completely fair to them. You want to join the American military, we're not going to send you into one of our wars or something like that. If you're from one of these countries, you're stationed in your country. However, this is also a good thing, because if there's any type of threat, then you can pull a military, or you can rouse support from all the countries that are participating in North America. That increases deterrence, because no country wants to fight the United States on its own. No country wants to fight the United States and then NATO. Especially, no country wants to fight NATO, the United States, and 22 other countries in the entire continent of North America. So in that way, you could spend less on your military, because now there's a huge integration of the same military, across the entirety of North America. Here's where it gets even better. The United States does not need any of the things that are kind of being provided from these countries militarily, because we are the top dog in the military. All of our hardware, everything is top, the best. They couldn't really outfit us with anything. So in the same way, they could stop spending as much on their military every year. We could fill in the gaps. Oh, OBS disconnected. What happened? Are we good? Reconnecting? Okay, good. We're reconnected. Okay. So we go even a step further, because John, he's never he's a million steps in this. So I'll put it this way. The next step is, what was I thinking? I just lost my train of thought here. So they subsidize the military. Yes, you don't need as much of a military anymore. What's another thing? Oh yes, the Pan American Highway. This has been proposed for a while, to have a highway basically all the way from Alaska all the way down to Panama. The reason you want to do this economic union is not just because all these countries get to use the US dollar, their economies are integrated, they have security guarantees, their militaries are integrated, like that's all well and good, but why do you do it like for the people, right? You want to raise the standard of living. You also don't want all of a sudden everybody to just flood into the United States or flood into other countries and displace those workers, and then all of a sudden there's a lot of competition in the workforce. You don't want that exactly. Or you don't want people competing in every degree of a society. You say if people are going to compete, it could be in the workforce, but don't make it also the housing market and make it also a schooling system and whatever else. So you say you have to sign up at specific offices, and these offices can, it's basically the bureaucracy that would come from it, which is fine. That's kind of how things go. So the federal government or coalition gets together, works with all these other countries. We call it the economic union, we call it the North American Union, whatever. You can go to these union offices and they will have you fill out information. They'll do a background check. You'll have to prove that you can speak the language of whatever country you're going to. And they will give you basically a work visa, but it's not a visa. You can just go there and work forever, basically. If you want, you can apply for citizenship at some point, and that allows you to actually like own property in that country. But otherwise, you can sign up. You can be, say, a Mexican can sign up for this and then go work in Cuba. Panaman can sign up and then go work in the United States. Somebody in the United States can sign up and go work in Canada, right? It's so that people can fill niches all across North America. But it's not a huge influx of immigration that everybody's going to move here. You can't move here. You can move here if you want, and it makes it more easier. But basically, if you're saying, okay, all this commerce and all these workers are going to be coming through all these different countries, what's the best way to do that is you connect everything with a highway. So it's basically, you could have 3 highway systems that go all the way through Canada. They don't all have to go up to Alaska. Some of them could, maybe one. They go basically along the Rocky Mountains or along the side of a shallow part of the Rocky Mountains. Then they go through the southern border into Mexico. Then they go through Mexico into, you could say, Belize or Guatemala, through Guatemala into Honduras, and keep going all the way down to through Nicaragua and Costa Rica, and then Panama. And obviously with Panama, you can't really go any further. But that would connect all of these contiguous North American countries onto one, or basically 3 super highways. So a bunch of commerce, a bunch of business what would happen, and a bunch of money would be moving in between all these countries, stimulating the economy constantly. Yeah, it would take a lot of investment for infrastructure bill, but if all these countries are basically putting it up, it could happen quick, and it would be a very impactful project. It's already been proposed for a while, but there's not really like a good reason to do it unless you're going to make an economic union like I've been proposing. And then finally, the last part I'll say about the North American Union is this. The best part of this is that it protects against 2 things. One is if a person comes along, if a U.S. president comes along and says, I like all these countries in the Union, but I actually want to make them states. I want to make them U.S. territory. One, I don't want that to happen. That's the opposite of what I want to happen, as a matter of fact. The reason for that is because if they did become states, they would then have representation and they would be able to vote in our elections. So that would make it very hard for any person that represents the United States to then be president. Because you have these huge populations of people in other countries. The way the Electoral College would work is that all of a sudden, say like Texas and New York and California, they have high populations, they have a relatively large size of territory, and they also have a lot of electoral votes, right? I think California has the most, over 50. Those would all have to get split up, right? And so then for maybe the next couple decades, the incumbent president would be somebody from one of the other countries in North America, which I'm not going to say that'd be a bad thing, but it wouldn't be representative of America. It would possibly be at that time, but that's a downfall of empires to get too big. It's the same thing that happened with Rome. Too many groups were involved in the decision-making process. Nobody could properly agree, and so authoritarianism had to take hold to actually get anything done. They went through periods of unrest. They had 2 civil wars. These are things that we hope to completely avoid. And the best thing that you can do is maintain sovereignty of these countries. You give them agency. You give them say if they want things to change. You give them a platform for that. And if people want to vote or vote for representatives to be able to speak their voice on council, sure, that's absolutely fine, and that's encouraged. But what we won't do is say, Jamaica, you are now a United States territory. Or Mexico, you are now part of the United States. Or Canada, you are now part of the United States. We will not do that. We will not do that. And the other reason that we don't do that is because they have more power. And we would have more power as countries if they weren't states. If we were all just feeding each other's economies, that would be fantastic. But if all of a sudden a federal government emerged that had to subsidize certain states, and because this is how it works, the United States has states, or is full of states that either give to the Federal Reserve or take from the Federal Reserve. New York, I live in New York. New York gives about 2 times what it takes. So that means all of our tax revenue, any other money that we generate is New York State, that is for the federal government. That means that twice as much of what we take is what we give. So we subsidize the states that can't do that. That means that we subsidize, say, like Oklahoma, which has, I can't give you the exact, maybe it's like 45th or 44th when it comes to national standing for taking versus giving. Even Arizona takes more than it gives. So it works like this. It's about 50-50, but most states actually don't contribute. Most states take. But because of states like Texas, New York, California that have such large and robust economies, North Carolina, I think Virginia, maybe not Virginia, Florida, North Carolina, Texas, New York, Michigan, Massachusetts, I don't know Maine, I don't think Maine, and California as well. Those subsidize the other states because of the revenue that they generate. All right. So if all of a sudden all these other all these other countries, Mexico, Canada, Jamaica, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Haiti, if all of a sudden they were all states or at least territories of the United States, we would have to subsidize them. We would no longer be able to say, yeah, they contribute to our economies, and that's actually a good thing. If a worker comes from Jamaica and he works in Texas and he generates revenue for a company, the company in Texas is what's making money, right? And then they pay taxes on that. So the federal government and the state, well, actually, there's no income taxes. So they want to get money in that way, at least in Texas. But if they weren't a state, if they were a state or a territory of the United States, we would have to subsidize them. And so there's a million good reasons to not make all the countries in North America part of America. Respect their sovereignty, leave them as countries, allow them a voice and give them some representation, but do not seek to incorporate them as territories of the United States. Do not do that. It is much more powerful if they remain as independent countries. There's a reason that the European Union is the way that it is. The European Union is not a singular country. And it works best that way because everybody gets representation. Everybody can say what they want or what they choose. And if they don't like one country, it's very easy to go to another one and work and start over, create new life there, whatever it is. And so giving people that opportunity, it's the most American thing I can think of. And the last thing I'll say about this truly is that the term American will shift. American will no longer mean being born in the United States. It will then at that point probably take over the idea of being in North America. Because if you are a Jamaican, you are an American. If you are a Nicaraguan, you are an American. If you are a Chilean from South America, you are an American. You're just not from the United States, right? And that's a bit different. So that's really all I kind of wanted to say about that. But I honestly see the North American Union solving a lot of problems, creating a lot of economic goodwill, increasing a lot of standard of living for many countries, and stabilizing regions as well. The biggest thing I'll say, kind of to end this topic, is this. Cuba, as I've already discussed, has a lot going on when it comes to relationships with the United States. I believe through charity, goodwill, and redefining relationships with the Cuban government, the United States could offer economic prosperity that would shift their economic system away from socialism and communism. There is a group of Cubans that live in Miami, that live in Florida, that have fled Cuba and have understood the American way of life. And they now call on their Cuban brothers and sisters to understand what life could be like. not living under an authoritative dictator, not living under the oppression of communism. They are right that capitalism is a flawed system and it leads to exploitation and that many people are at a disadvantage in a capitalist society. But on the same token, that does not mean that communism is the better solution or alternative. And I'm sure to the people that have suffered under communism or the, unfortunate policies of embargo of the United States, they understand that it is better to seek goodness than to seek frivolous intervention. If we decide that we are content with the Cuban way of life and we want nothing but to embolden and enhance their lifestyle and their society in the way that they want, that is something that all society should hope to achieve. I personally do not have any qualms with Cubans. A girl that I actually just spoke to, or we kind of had a thing for a bit. She was a quarter Cuban. She was half Cuban, or no, quarter Cuban, a quarter Chilean, and half Polish. Very interesting, right? And I very much would like to speak with some Cubans. En Spanish, perhaps. Lo siento mucho para mi español. Usualmente yo no hablo español porque mi familia no se entienden. Solamente yo. Entonces, cuando yo hablo español es con mi app en mi celular, mi iPhone. Cuando yo uso un app, se llama Duolingo. Y con esta, usualmente yo creo que necesito estudiar más. Cuando yo tengo un negocio, es más importante cuando las personas significadas encontré a mí, porque si ellos no entienden inglés, cuando yo estoy malo y triste, porque yo quiero entender. Otra vez, lo siento mucho para mi español. Yo creo que es malo. Sí. Me conoce a español más o menos, porque no tengo amigos para hablarme. Entonces, so that's pretty much it. I can actually go for a while. I just kind of run out of stuff to say. Pero a las personas de Cuba, me encanto. Mis gentes, todo el mundo en este país y los países de, I don't know how to say North America. I think you know what I mean. Me encanto. Like, I love you. It's like I'm enchanted by you. It's not necessarily like te quiero, just like I want you or like I love you, but I'm getting there. I do need some Spanish friends that could help me out. Actually, I do know a guy. Maybe he'll be able to help me out. But yeah, this was interesting. I don't know how this will do for watch time. I don't know how many people really even watched. I'll take a look. 4 whole viewers. Whoa, nice. Well, that's pretty cool. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. Maybe I'll have somebody join me and we can kind of have a discussion on the live. That would be a little bit nicer, It's just difficult because I know a lot of my videos don't really get pushed out because of the content. I talk about politics. I talk about boring economy stuff. I talk about future aspirations that don't really have any concrete backing to in a modern day sense. I say in 11 years I'm going to do something. Well, in 2 years I could lose my arms and legs and then not be able to accomplish anything. So, but, if you believe in it, I usually say to people, take me as seriously as you would like to. That works for me. But I'm going to wrap up for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching, as always. I had a pretty good time. I guess we'll just call this Talks with John. I have Socks with John, so Talks with John is kind of funny as well. But maybe the music was too much. I don't know. Maybe it'd be better without the music. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Maybe we'll go live again tomorrow. We're going to mix it up. I don't know. I'm just trying a bunch of stuff at this point. But thank you for watching, guys. Comment if you made it to the end of the video. Comment something crazy out of pocket. Something like the Knicks deserve to lose. Something crazy. No, the Knicks definitely deserve to win. They were, what was it, 57 years? Yeah, go Knicks. I'm a New Yorker. I don't even watch basketball that much, but I knew the Knicks deserved it. So good on them. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Until next time.